As of the writing of this video, we've had two-part Democratic debates. Predictably, a number of political YouTube channels put on live streams where they offered up their own commentary in addition to the debate footage itself. Afterwards, a lot of them were actually hit with copyright strikes by NBC or CNN respectively. Needless to say, they were not happy about this.
CNN shut us down, and they shut us down hard, issuing what's called a hard copyright strike to our YouTube channel, in addition to ending the stream. On the screen for you now is the takedown notice. You will notice at the bottom left that it says manually detected. This means it was not an algorithm that caught us inadvertently as someone stealing their content, but this was a person whose name I've blurred out, who personally at CNN found our stream and went out of their way to get us a copyright strike. You will notice in the lower right of the screen, it says strike expires October 28, 2019. This means we are banned from all live streaming on YouTube for 90 days. This is a disaster, and this was optional.
I understand why they're mad. I certainly don't want to see anybody getting a copyright strike, unless they're actually just reposting somebody else's content. And I don't want to see anybody lose their live streaming abilities, or have the future of their channels put in jeopardy. All that said, I do empathize with NBC, CNN, and other mainstream media outlets. You see, it's very fashionable to hate on the mainstream media, and I get it. The media is deeply flawed and deserves most of the criticism it gets. But, unlike most of my fellow YouTubers, I don't share in the tear it all down, we're better off without them impulse. I actually value our existing institutions, including the press. As I've said before, YouTube channels, even high-budget ones, are not an adequate replacement. The fact is, the mainstream media provides a massive subsidy to every channel that talks about news and politics, including mine. In the case of these debates, they spent an enormous amount of money hosting them and broadcasting them around the world. And I get why they're protective over their intellectual property when YouTubers do simultaneous streams where they're specifically not showing the ads.
Why do you think people come to us to watch this CNN? Why do you think? What do you think it might be? Do you think it might be we don't start the proceedings with a fucking 15-minute flag ceremony? You dumb
The only new media personality I've ever heard acknowledge this dynamic is Ben Shapiro, a man who is no fan of the media himself.
I'm going to say something that's very unpopular in right-wing media to say, but this is true, okay? Here is the fact. The New York Times and the Washington Post, these newspapers that we think are wildly biased and to the left and we hate, they are biased. They are to the left. If they were not expending hundreds of millions of dollars on reporters, the news business would be significantly poorer. The fact is that sites like mine over at Daily Wire, okay, we're a vastly growing website. We have something like 65 million page views in the last month and 16 million unique visitors. We're a very, very large website. Okay, we rely on the reporting of other sites in order for us to supplement our own commentary.
I've heard YouTubers boast about how they can do things much cheaper than the traditional press. That's true in its way. But this ignores a significant problem. Some types of journalism actually require large overhead. On election night 2020, when every political YouTuber does a live stream, where will they get their exit polling data? Is Tim Pool going to drive around in his van from swing state to swing state, collecting that information and relaying it to the rest of us? No. People will look to CNN or NPR or Fox News or the Washington Post to get that data while they broadcast it to the rest of us. As I write this video, the US is on the brink of a very serious trade war with China, and a potential real war with Iran. If that happens, how will we get the info as to what's happening? Are the Young Turks going to send Emma Vigeland to the front lines? Somehow, I doubt it. I liken these political YouTube channels to a cargo cult. They have all of this information ready at their fingertips, but none of them seem to have any appreciation for how it got there. So many people love to bash billionaires and corporations, but the fact of the matter is, most of the news we consume, even if it's secondhand from some guy's news channel, originally came from a multinational corporation or from a nonprofit with billionaire patrons. Anytime you hear someone say on this website, the media isn't covering this, they're lying.
And the media, by the way, where are you? I thought you guys were all going to object when Trump did things wrong. I know you're obsessed with Russia and a couple of other things, but where are you guys? There was an 8-year-old American girl that was killed. Where are you guys? I thought you guys were going to make a big deal out of this.
Online media's covering it. Democracy Now!, big expose about it.
That's right. But mainstream media, I see almost nothing about this.
They wouldn't know about it unless someone else had originally reported it. If the mainstream media were to die, many YouTube channels would surely go along with it, and we'd live in a world where everything looks like the Huffington Post. So why do people rail against the mainstream media so much? Well, the digital political editor for Fox News, Chris Steyerwalt, provides at least one rationale.
One of the reasons why so many people do media criticism is because it is so unbelievably easy.
Easy.
The media does plenty of things wrong. so in a sense, it's a target-rich environment. But that's not the only thing that Stirewalt means. The fact is, when you produce enough content, people who are willing to will be able to provide an unlimited amount of criticism, nitpicking all of the things you got wrong or said in some biased way. If I wanted to, I could do this with any of the channels I watch. If I made enough content, people could do this with my channel. So if you produce a television show, or publish a newspaper, or run a radio program every single day, people can devote their entire lives to dumping on you. And some people do that. In addition to all of this, the media really is in a position where they cannot win. For example, I've heard tons of people complain about how the media prematurely declared George W. Bush the winner of the 2000 election. That's a fair criticism. Again, the media does plenty of things wrong. But what happens when the media actually exercises caution and doesn't call elections until there's a clear winner? Well, some of the same people boast about how they beat the media to the punch.
I mean, this legitimately is pathetic. I mean, we called Wisconsin forever ago.
Called
Florida way before they did. I mean, it's been all night.
A bunch of 2 hours? What for Florida? Seriously?
A bunch of fat stoners on mushrooms are making calls 40 minutes before you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it so wrong.
Yeah. I mean, we started this at 4 p.m. Pacific time, and at first we were like, no way Trump's winning.
No.
And then I would say like an hour into it, we were like, holy
and we
Trump
looked at the way
win.
we looked at the we were like, well, let's look at the path, and we made our own electoral map, and all of a sudden it was like, holy the momentum is shifting, and now it's Hillary that needs a miracle. It was crazy.
The media's been way behind, dude. They've been way behind on everything.
So, the press is in a position where they cannot win. They have people who aren't held to the same standard, who don't suffer the same reputational costs they do, recycling their material while claiming to perform the same institutional function they do, only better. I don't know if there is a mainstream media plot against new media, and if there is one, out of self-interest, I hope it's not successful. But I understand why one would exist. When Skeptosaurus Rex 99587 makes a video bashing the media while using mainstream media articles as sources, I get why journalists would be upset. Now, thus far, I've talked about the economics of journalism here from a standpoint of supply, and the differences between new media and old media. These two institutions have some serious flaws in common, though, and these ones come from the demand side. We've heard a lot about the evils of corporate media, and the problems associated with having news sustained by profit. There's definitely something to that. The thing is, that doesn't change with new media. Even with crowdfunding, or YouTube advertising, where the buyer of the ads is disassociated from the source material, is brought into the picture. Almost all monetization models depend on a captive audience. One method is just a little more direct than the other. Capitalism is fantastic, and I'm a huge fan. I don't think it's a real exaggeration to say that it's the greatest thing to ever happen to humanity. It is the only consistent method of delivering people exactly what they want. It does have its flaws, though, and one of those flaws is, it's extremely effective at delivering people what they want. You see, what people want isn't always what's good for them. Having a McDonald's on every corner may be convenient, but it isn't really good for the obesity rate, now is it? The same problem exists when it comes to the media. The press gets a ton of flack for emphasizing things like the horse race and campaign gaffes over important substantive things like public policy. Some people have even gone so far as to claim that this is a conspiracy by elites who, in their infinite evil, want to distract people so they don't know what's really going on. The truth is much more simple. The reason media outlets don't go in depth with policy is because most people find it boring and wouldn't watch it. Don't believe me? Just look here on YouTube. You can watch legitimate experts engage in important policy discussions in great detail for as long as you like. That content is out there. Or you can watch cat videos, or slime videos, or top 10 videos. Or my personal favorite, you can watch this gorgeous woman fish in tropical locations while wearing a bikini. Which do most people prefer? The views speak for themselves. And here's the problem. If people aren't watching, then you aren't making money. This is true whether you're operating on a traditional advertising model or if you're crowdfunded like most political YouTubers are. No one wants to buy ads on a television network where no one is watching. And no one is going to contribute to a Patreon account of a YouTuber they find too boring to watch. The correlation is not perfect, but regardless of your monetization model, the larger your audience is, the more money you're making. Again, those of you who watch this channel know that I don't have a problem with people making money. However, in the case of media, this does present certain moral hazards. Misleading thumbnails and clickbait titles are obvious examples of this, but they're pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. The real problem is, this creates a situation that is fundamentally at odds with our ideal notions of what journalism is supposed to be. The Fourth Estate is supposed to speak truth to power, and tell the people what they need to hear. The current economics of journalism and commentary creates an incentive structure where people are far better off telling their audiences what they want to hear. Consider filter bubbles. A filter bubble is when a website algorithm delivers personalized results to the user based on what it thinks they want to see. Why do they do this? Is it some conspiracy to brainwash the public or divide us? No. Disheartening as it is, it's all about survival. People are more likely to leave a website if it's not showing them what they want to see. That's true of Facebook and Amazon, but also of news sites. So, not validating people's views puts a company at a competitive disadvantage in the free marketplace. Obviously, you can see the problems of echo chambers manifesting themselves in our politics today, but there's not much we can do about it. What is profitable is not necessarily what is good. There are other problems too. As long as I've been aware of the media, I've heard people trash the press for sensationalism. That's certainly a valid criticism. I remember after the Columbine shooting, my dad took away my video games because the media kept telling him that they were the reasons the shooting happened. That might seem silly to you, but these were my priorities when I was 10. But again, let's look at the demand side. A big reason the media does sensationalism is because they know people are more likely to watch something that is shocking or inflammatory over something that is cerebral and analytical. That doesn't go away with new media. I'm sorry, but is this not sensationalism?
That's why we need something to be done about the massive power of these companies. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in the dystopian nightmare, which we're walking into every day. It's getting worse.
Another complaint about the press is that corporate advertisement prevents media figures from speaking out against entrenched interests. There may well be truth in that. But again, you really don't escape this with new media. First of all, almost all YouTube channels are indirectly corporate funded. Who do you think buys ad space on YouTube? But even in the case of crowdfunding, you don't escape this problem. A fat Patreon account can prevent someone from speaking truth to power just as easily as advertisers or corporate shareholders can. I've had conversations in confidence with YouTubers who are much larger than me, ones who do this for a living, where they told me they wouldn't touch certain topics, or they wouldn't advertise certain positions they held, or they wouldn't even criticize President Trump when they thought it was merited because they were worried about the financial repercussions of pissing off their audience. I've talked to YouTubers who aren't much larger than me, who are afraid to criticize larger channels even when they know they're wrong, because there was a lot of overlap with their respective audiences. While I think less of these people as individuals knowing this, I realize that in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. YouTubers that don't pander to a specific audience are more likely to lose market share to those who do. A lot of people say that Tim Pool panders to Trump supporters in his audience, while claiming to be a center-left journalist. Is this true? It's impossible to know his motivations, but I certainly get where his critics are coming from. Interestingly enough, he did say this a few years ago.
Many people have asked me, have I ever been directed to produce content to fit a political ideology? And the answer is yes, okay, by the higher-ups of very large companies. And I was told that we are tasked with siding with the audience. Unfortunately, I've found that it's no longer the role of media to challenge preconceptions, to challenge the narrative. It's the goal of media to find people who will click the link more than anyone else so they can make money. They can get shares, they can get investment, and they can sleep well at night.
This isn't terribly surprising given the reasons I've laid out in this video. Of course, pandering or failing to pander to an audience can have the same effects on an individual YouTuber as it can on a corporation. So, in the end, it doesn't really matter if Tim or anybody else intentionally panders to a certain kind of audience. The result will be the same. If he or anyone else consistently fails to validate their audience, they will likely lose that audience, and those who used to watch will move on to someone who panders even better. Yes, I realize that not all consumers of news are this fickle, but a lot are. The worst part about this is that we really don't have any better options. Limiting choices or regulating the content of media would only make things worse. We just need to be aware of the liabilities of the economics of journalism, and go from there.